People want labels more than they want anything else. We are obsessed with them, like to an unhealthy degree. I have this disorder. I'm this person. I stand for this thing. The challenge being that we over-identify with our labels. Society wants lots and lots and lots of cheap labels. It thinks that if it gets its labels well diagnosed, it's got a complete form. So I just have to find enough of my labels and then I'll be a complete person that's interoperable with other people and I'll have solved that problem.
Welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Antonia, you mentioned something on the last episode. I said, I want to ask you about that. And I hit record, so I'm going to ask you.
Uh-oh.
You said that you can almost not read online personality type write-ups or profiles anymore. Like
I can read them, but...
Well, of course you can read them.
But I don't really enjoy it.
you have a challenge with them. Yeah. You always feel like when I read, like let's say you pull up a profile about an ESTJ and you read it, what's the experience? You're like, gross, this is terrible. They don't know what they're talking about at all. This is all false. Or like what's the experience? When you say you can't read them, what do you mean by that? I can read them. When I read them, I go, yep, that's one version of that type. Okay.
That's what it is. It's that, those composite, sort of like they place hundreds, if not thousands of faces over each other. And actually, interestingly enough, that's considered the most attractive face. When you take, I can't remember how many you need, but it's really interesting to see how a composite of almost everybody's face ends up becoming one of the most attractive faces.
Really? I would have expected the opposite. I would expect like the most bland, average-looking face of all of them.
I know. It's weird. It's crazy. And I find that profiles of certain personality, well, actually all the personality types are kind of like that. Yeah. It's almost an aggregate of like all of the versions of that type that give you a very pleasant type description. And that's fine. It's just a challenge when a person thinks they have to have like fidelity to that description. Now, what's funny is that you just mentioned that I said I don't like to read them. And then in that very same podcast, I created a little snapshot of an ISTJ going to Disney, which you had a lot of pushback around.
I did.
You're like, don't explain that. Don't talk about ISTJs that way. And I was like, I don't think it was a poor ISTJ description. It's just one ISTJ description. Yeah. And there are stereotypes for a reason, There's like there's certain stereotypes around certain types because we all know that one. Most of us have a version of that personality type in our life someplace. Sure. And so they're relatable, but they're not complete. Yeah. And there are, I suspect there's a lot of mistypes in people who are trying to find their best fit type because they think they're supposed to be matching these profile descriptions. Yeah. And I don't really resonate with a lot of ENTP descriptions because, more so now, but in the early days, they all described them as like Doc Brown from Back to the Future.
Okay, I got a lot of stuff here. And I do want deep thinking, but I don't want long answers
Not yet.
I don't want long answers yet because I'm going to forget what I'm going to ask you. So I love this, by the way, and I kind of have a sense of what you're talking about. I have an idea of how to talk about it in a second, but I want to pause for a moment and go, what I could hear you saying right now is that I don't like to read online profiles of a particular type is because it pins it down too much. It's too static, and there's tons of expressions of that type. Yeah. And I immediately go, man, that's a dangerous road to go down because...
Well, you have to,
Because if you don't pin down definitions and what this looks like, it's really hard to understand this already. Like this is a complex system, a complex thing to understand. There's all these moving parts.
To be very fair, I don't think they should be eradicated. There's high facility. Like we need to have those type descriptions. Sure. Especially when we first start learning about type. Like what are you supposed to do? Yes. You're supposed to piece together the most complicated aspects. Yes. I mean, it's kind of like starting out with 1,000-piece Lego set. Yeah. And like, hey, I know you've never put a Lego set together, but here's your 1,000-piece set. And it's like you kind of have to start out simpler and a little bit more.
So here's a way to frame this or ask this in a way that I want to unpack why this happens. Okay. So basically what you're talking about is if I went into, like if I was passing by a quick service restaurant or I went into a restaurant, I saw a picture of like a nice steak dinner or like a nice hamburger or some kind of a meal. Like let's just say it's steak, mashed potatoes, and green beans. And I look at the picture, I'm like, I want that. Yeah. I order it, and it comes out looking different than the picture.
Yeah.
Right? It's different than the picture. And I think what you're saying is we're positing type like a picture, like a steak dinner you could order. Here's what an ISTJ or ESTJ would look like. And you've got your steak, mashed potatoes, and green beans. You're like, well, that's one way.
Yeah.
You could see it. Like, that's a rare steak, but it could also be a well-done steak. So that's still a steak.
Yeah.
But one's rare, one's well-done. But for some reason, when I go to a restaurant, I don't expect the meal to come out looking like the picture, ever.
Yeah.
So why, when we get to type, do we go, well, that person can't be that type because it doesn't match the picture exactly?
Yeah.
Why do we immediately lose track of our rationality of when we expect things? We don't expect like what's like abstracted to us or posited to us to be the exact thing we get. But for some reason, when we talk about human cognition or type, people expect it to work better than a picture of food that comes out from behind a kitchen.
Yeah.
Like, it's more precise and more accurate. This human cognition that's completely difficult to map in its own right, with all these different experiences, timelines, backgrounds, age, station of life, career, cognition, we expect it to be like a one-to-one correlation. Like, if I just push on this part of their brain, like, it'll make the TE come out or the FE come out, or it's like a one-to-one with behavior and cognition.
Yeah.
That's my big question, is why the heck do we do it with or give grace there? I could see you kind of building up for an answer.
Well, I mean, there's, the question has gone on for a bit.
I'm kind of waiting for you to kind of jump in here and not interrupt, but just kind of like, oh, well, I could tell you, Joel, here you go.
I mean, if I am tagging something.
Go ahead.
Well, the first thing I was tagging is like some vegan is really struggling with the fact that you use steak as
well, in your vegan picture, there's just a big mushroom. Like those big
it's a portobello mushroom.
Portobello mushrooms. It's delicious. It's cooked deliciously.
It's got couscous.
Yes.
So,
but it doesn't come out exactly like it looks in the picture.
It doesn't look like
that mushroom is going to be a different mushroom than they took a picture of.
Than the picture.
Hey, just a quick time out from the video. I want you to notice there's people behind me that are actively practicing a brand new skill they learned called personality profiling. This is something that myself and Antonia teach. It's basically a skill of being able to sit down with somebody and have a conversation with them, another human being, for roughly about an hour, and help them determine their best fit personality type. We have a whole methodology we teach around this. We've had students from all over the world come out for years now, over a decade of learning and study, and there's new cohort forming for this all the time. I would love for you to be the next person sitting in this room workshopping this skill with us. It's not only just learning the person's best fit personality type, it's also understanding the map of their mind, the entire cognition or map of their minds. It's very useful in a lot of different applications, particularly coaching, therapy, or if you're a person that helps other people. So if you're interested in this, check out profilertraining.com, and maybe we'll see you in the next cohort and possibly in this next workshop with us. All right, now back to the main video.
I think it's because I don't know of anybody who has not made this mistake, but we go in not understanding how complicated this really is.
Of course.
And so when we first engage with type, we are expecting it to be simple and direct and have real obvious application.
Sure.
And be another iteration of like the flag personality type, where there's 4 colors of flags. And I'm a red flag and you're a blue flag.
Or type A, type B. I think that's what most people have like that. Or introvert, extrovert. People have a sense of it, even if they don't understand personality. They're like, oh, you're more with people. You like to be alone.
Yeah, exactly. They're helpful distinguishers that become buckets that we sort of throw characteristics into.
Sure.
And when you first start, you kind of have to understand it that way because every model has to be understood at its base elements. Like 16 profiles is a lot more fleshed out than type A, type B, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. So it already feels kind of complicated. Like 16 different descriptions, that already feels really fleshed out and complicated. I think that we don't hold a lot of space in our brains. Like when we went skydiving, and of course I was a huge ball of nerves, but when the door swung open, and of course like I'm attached to some dude behind me who's probably like 2 to 3 times my size, and I'm like, well, he's done this 20 times today and I'm like the 21st person he's doing this with, so I'm gonna go ahead and trust him. But I'm like I'm like talking myself into doing all of this until the door flies open and I look down and I'm like, oh, I'm not nervous at all. And later on, I found out it's because your brain can't process the height. And so it sees it as like a train set. Like that's how your brain goes, oh, I'm about to go get closer to a train set. And then now you're like free falling and the huge dude is like pulling the ripcord and stuff. Our brain just can't process certain things. And the more complicated it is, or the less familiarity it has with something, the more it sort of tries to do like that Photoshop smudge tool and sort of fill in the blanks with something that might be an approximation around there. And I think that type ends up as like a Photoshop smudge tool for a lot of people. It's like a way of understanding the complexity of a human being. But I actually think the complexity of a human being is like being 10,000 feet up.
Yeah.
We oversimplify it and see it as a quote unquote a train set, because the truth is that the complexity of it is outrageous. A human is an insanely complex thing.
Yeah.
And it's we are emergent of a lot of systems running. Like so many systems, we have entire like college, courses on all of these systems running. We have like the physical somatic system running, and there are entire schools of thought around the body and all of the systems that are running. And I mean, if you've ever taken a anatomy physiology class, you have to like memorize like 100 and something bones, and all these muscle clusters. I mean, it's so complicated, and that's just the bones, right? We're not talking about like the respiratory system and, circulatory system and all that stuff. So we are like physically complicated with systems. And then psychology is this like entire branch of study, which is all the sort of conceptual complicated systems that are running, all the ways that we're like sort of coded and wired and our experiences and all of that. And then we have like, the complicated spiritual systems that we engage with and the complicated emotional systems. I mean, like, the amount of systems that are running inside of us, we probably can't actually put a number to them.
Yeah.
There's so many complicated systems running inside of us. And so when we look at that kind of thing directly, it's like, oh, that's a train set, right? Choo choo. Like, how do I make it simple? How do I make it so that my brain can comprehend it? And 16 profiles sounds like a lot.
What I hear you saying then is basically we oversimplify and we make it static because of its complexity.
Yes. Yeah,
not in spite of it.
Well, and that's why it exists at all, because we need on-ramps to the complexity that is a person. And okay, so that's just the person. And then what's the point of systems like type? Well, the point of systems like type is to see if there's any patterns between us.
Yeah.
Like, are there things that are common to all of these incredibly unique individualized systems running? And the answer is, yeah, actually there is some commonalities. And we know that because we see the commonalities of family. And we see the commonalities of people who choose to be in each other's life, like friends. We see commonalities there.
Yeah.
So we know that there's commonalities. We know that they're not just entirely 100% bespoke creatures bumping into each other.
Yeah.
There's lots of commonalities because we all have sort of the same building blocks. And type is an attempt to pattern what those commonalities are. And once you start to see some of these commonalities that are not usually pointed out in other areas or schools of thought, you go, oh, this is really, there's like something here and it's really interesting. And again, 16 feels like a lot. But the truth is, the further down this rabbit's hole you get, or one gets, I mean, I'm like every 3 to 6 months now, I'm having like a total epiphany around type. I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally see it in a completely different way than I did 6 months ago or whatever. And I think it's because it's a lot more
dynamic.
It's so dynamic, and we're not closed systems. That's the other thing, is that our type and our cognitive functions, I mean, that's kind of the point of the last episode that we recorded on how our family systems influence us. We're not closed systems. So our functions and how we're pre-wired and our personality types are not just complicated in amongst themselves. They're also being influenced by other complicated systems like a family system.
Sure.
So yeah, I think the reason why we start out forgetting just how much, or not even understanding how much nuance there is in this, is because I think the point of it is to make it simple. The point of it is to take something that's like outrageously, insanely complicated and make it manageable and make it something that we can engage and interact with. And so you kind of have to start with those, I call it the coloring book version of type. It's like really bold, black, thick lines and lots of white space and lots of room to kind of wrap your head around what you're looking at. And those profiles are basically the coloring book versions of each of the personality types. But the reason why I said I can't read them anymore is not because I don't think that they are important or have facility. I think that they're really important. When you're first learning, you have to learn that way. How else are you going to learn?
Yeah.
But I can't really read them at this point because I see how they're usually pointing out a single style of that type.
Yes.
And there's going to be other people who have had different systems influencing them, like their family system or their culture or whatever, that they didn't have permission, for whatever reason, they didn't have permission to show up the way that profile paints it, because most of those profiles are like, well, all other things being equal, if somebody isn't like slapped down too outrageously for their type preferences and aren't boosted up to become one-sided too much, this is probably how it's like going to kind of pan out.
Yeah, I think like to me, this episode is going to probably just end up being more philosophical. I don't know, but I think in terms of like the Myers-Briggs system itself and how they captured Jung's thinking from the early 1900s. He wrote Psychological Type 1921, English translation 1923. Myers and Briggs get a hold of this and they developed the Myers-Briggs system, which is basically a sorter. It was, if you could almost look at it this way, the Myers-Briggs system is like the best attempt to quantify or measure Jung's theories in a like measurable way in the 20th century with the tools they had available then. And
engage with it in a way that didn't require, analyst level thinking.
Sure. And what I could posit here is, what if there was a different, like, let's say it was now, a very different technology set on the scene. They might not have invented the same system. Like the way we think about type, these 4 dichotomies, all the ways that we process, the way we go about understanding it, a lot of that's influenced by the measuring tool that was developed in the 20th century of these dichotomous nature, this versus that in these 4 buckets. Right? Like,
it's very modernist. Yeah.
But what I mean is like the way we measured it, the way we tried to measure our cognition on Jung's channels informed how we think about it now.
Yes.
And I think it's some of the work you and I are trying to do, Antonia, is we're trying to like detether it a little bit and say, maybe we can go back to the original Jung versions of these in some ways. Yeah.
And I think an important question, and this is something I've been playing around with, is what were the functions, like what is their point? Like what's the point of them?
Can you tag that for 1 second? Because I just want to make a point here about this, that the 20th century model was a model to measure, define, and arrive at conclusion.
Yeah.
Not open-ended questions. It was to try to not nail an answer down.
Well, and somehow
the whole 20th century was occupied by this.
And somehow put it in like urban development, if possible. Right? Like everything was very extroverted thinking last century. So it was like, how do we make this applicable? How do we turn this into something that
how do you use it in corporate America or some academia or whatever?
Like, yeah, exactly.
So what I'm trying to say is that like the tool itself was trying to find the answer of your type. You take this assessment to find the answer of your best fit personality type. And once you find the answer of your best fit personality type, that's a label now you carry with you, like scientist or doctor or wife or mother or father, whatever else. That's your label you take with you.
Yes.
And that's the answer you have of who you are and how you operate.
Yeah.
And so you could understand why profiles or the way we write about type is still that thinking is carried from the 20th century to now, even though it's kind of irrelevant now.
I don't know if it's irrelevant.
Not irrelevant. How do I say it? It's we have tools that go beyond it, that we don't need to necessarily have that.
Yeah, insufficient.
In the same way.
It's not complete.
But it's such the heritage that we come from that it would almost be impossible. Like you'd have to reinvent another system. The system is so widely accepted in the way that we did it in the 20th century that it's almost impossible to change it now.
Well, and thank goodness it was done in that way, because I get to know that it exists at all. I mean, it's pushed forward through the way that it was created, makes it very accessible.
I'm not crapping on this. I'm trying to say that we could, Myers and Briggs could have developed a different system that measured different things. And that's how it would be talked about now instead.
Yeah, of course.
But they decided to build it this way.
Yeah.
So when we talk about Jung and the 8 cognitive functions that Jung came up with, we talk about them in the way that Myers and Briggs have trained us to talk about them.
Yeah, to some extent.
Basically.
Yeah.
And therein lies a little bit of the challenge, is that we're trying to approach probably a postmodern 21st century way of thinking with endless technology. We're not boxed into trying to find the answer like 20th century. In fact, the question is more important now than ever. Look at the prompting of ChatGPT or AI. It's a whole different way of approaching things, but we still have to honor the 20th century because that's the model that gave it to us.
And I think there is still, even in a postmodern way of looking at things, there's still quite a bit of facility. And I don't think you're not saying that. I'm just here with you in the conversation.
Yeah. I can understand that. Maybe I'm being, like I said in the last episode, I'm too combative with information. So
are you now?
Go ahead. Yeah. What do you,
Yes. So Robert Anton Wilson says that the best models have use when they're pared down to their fundamentals, but are also infinitely expandable. Mm-hmm. And I think, well, and what's funny is that you say that we're looking at Jungian functions or type because of how Isabel and Catherine, Isabel Briggs Myers and Catherine Briggs, how they originally set it up in kind of a modernist way of engaging with Jung's work. And what's funny is that at this point, people don't even talk about Myers-Briggs. They talk about MBTI or 16 personalities. Mm-hmm. And so even that's lost to a lot of people that who originally developed it and why and what was their intent and their purpose and what were they trying to accomplish and all of that. Even that's being lost. Yeah. So even the thing that was the segue is no longer, people don't even know what the segue was, right? To bridge Jung's concepts into a way that creates an indicator or a way of looking at type. And so that's the first thing I would want to say. And the second thing is, at this time period, even though we're in a postmodern time period, I would say that people are label voracious.
Yeah.
Like people want labels more than they want anything else. And I don't know I still haven't completely sussed out what our obsession with labels is right now. Because we are obsessed with them, like to an unhealthy degree. We are totally obsessed with labels. I suspect it's because people want their experience honored and they think that if they can interface with a label, like I have this disorder or I'm this person or I stand for this thing or whatever it is, right? I'm with this tribe. I hold these opinions. This is my paradigm. This is my neurodivergence or whatever it is, like all the different ways that we label and tag ourselves. I think we think that if we can present a label that somebody else can understand, then they'll validate our experience. They'll go, oh, that's a valid thing because you have a label to it. Mm-hmm. And I suspect that postmodernism has made it so that we don't have identities that are as simple as they used to be. Like you rattled out a bunch of different labels that were not considered labels before. They were just ways of living. It
was like you had like 1 to 3 labels when you were growing up in the 20th century.
Yeah, like I'm a mom.
I'm a Presbyterian, and I'm a Pennsylvanian, right? It's like, that's right. Like your 3, like whatever.
Yeah,
like you
exactly.
had your kind of like broad brush zones you were part of.
Right.
And a lot of people were part of, like lots of people were part of these big zones, but we got so much nuance and variance now.
Yeah.
Right. It's like there's like even like multiple people that feel the same way about something have all their little variances, and so labels help them determine between themselves.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't just that we didn't have very many labels. It was like those things were all taken for granted, and they were satisfying. Like they were on an identity level satisfying. In a postmodern world, all of those positions and roles are being reevaluated and deconstructed. And, if I say I'm a mom, I mean, that's one of the that's one of the archetypes that is at the heart of all of living organic tissue to some extent. Maybe not single-celled organisms, but anything that gives birth from that point on, mom is deep archetypal primordial material.
Yeah.
But even now, if you say that, people don't make assumptions. It's like there's some assumptions, there's like primordial assumptions made, but there's not, it's like what that means for the person. There was a time when it meant I stay home with my kids. Now it's like, what does that mean? It's all bets are off. So I suspect that the reason why we want these labels is because we're looking for things that make us feel settled in our own identity.
Yeah.
Things that we kind of want to take for granted. Like we can't constantly and perpetually be reevaluating our identity all the time. It's exhausting. At least for me, maybe because I have introverted feeling way lower. There's some FP out there who's like, no, it's the point. I'm like, okay, but it's hard work too. So most of us cannot be doing that in perpetuity. We can't constantly be reevaluating who and what we are. And so we're looking for interoperable labels. We're looking for things that very quickly communicate large parts of ourselves to somebody else so that they can kind of get who we are. The challenge being that we over-identify with our labels because we start to see them not just as a way to interface with other people, but as who we actually are. When really our label will never, we're just too complicated. It's like the train set versus the landscape. It's like a label is always a train set. The landscape is the real thing. And so we're looking for easy ways to do that. And I think type is going to suffer from, every philosophy, every way of looking at reality is going to have a massive coloring of societal bias.
Yeah.
What's going on with society right now? Well, that's going to tell you how we engage with all of these things. And if you notice, society wants lots and lots and lots of cheap labels.
Yeah.
And it thinks that if it gets its labels well diagnosed, it's got a complete form.
Yes.
And so I just have to find enough of my labels, and then I'll be a complete person that's interoperable with other people, and I'll have solved that problem.
Yes. And my uncles, when I was like a kid, like my father, my uncles, the tier up here above me in my family, it was kind of like in the 20th century. I was a kid, 80s, 90s. I'm a Ford man. I'm a Chevy man.
Right.
They had these entire car lines they would be loyal to.
There was actually battles around Coke and Pepsi.
Right. Yeah.
For what reason?
And
Who knows?
like identity labels of like product. And I'm realizing, wait a second, as you're talking, I'm going, well, who's the product now?
Yeah.
It's us.
Yeah. We're the product.
Like, I wonder if this is just inventory. All we're just doing is we're doing the work of the systems inventory. We're like, they give us like one of those little like inventory in the old
we're self-sorting
80s, the 80s movies. We're like putting stickers on like the products on the shelf.
Right.
Like, we're just doing it for ourselves so that they know how to buy and sell us. Like basically the system has us inventorying for them so they know how to sort basically. Is my introverted feelings talking. That's kind of how it seems or feels like. And
or your Enneagram 6 talking.
I can almost feel my resistance to labeling myself because I can almost smell the intention behind it of, oh wait, I'm just making myself more buy and sellable through this. I'm easier to get onto a political cause. Oh, let's target that. He's got a little label in his Twitter handle or whatever, or X handle. Let's make sure we promote this political cause to him, or basically I'm doing all their work for them.
I don't think that that's not one of the motivations and intentions, or like not motivation or intention, but it's more like an energy that
the momentum that's running.
Yeah, it's an energy that feeds into the zeitgeist. Yes. I do think that that's one energy that feeds into the zeitgeist, but I also think another energy that feeds into the zeitgeist around all of this is that we're just totally overwhelmed. As people, as humans, we are super overwhelmed.
Well, that's how they get us.
Yeah, that's how they get you.
You're overwhelmed, so we're going to give you this anxiety diagnosis you can label yourself with, and you'll buy our medicine that will fix it.
Yeah, and while I do think that there are bad faith actors, and I've got my little conspiratorial...
Those aren't even bad faith actors.
Grand puppet master thinking as well, I would say that we're all... even the people who think that they're in control of everything are also on the receiving end of a lot of this.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is the timeline, this is the moment in the timeline in which we live, all of us, and so we're all facing the same pressures and the same zeitgeist pressures, and whether or not there was intent or just this is just the natural next emergent of human consciousness, postmodernism is it squeezes everybody in some ways. There's a lot of good and bad things to say about postmodernism. Okay, so I'm not necessarily crapping on postmodernism and saying it's this like terrible thing, but I also think it, just like with everything, it's like you don't solve problems, you trade them. Mm-hmm. There was plenty of problems with modernism, but there was also plenty of great things with modernism that has not made the transfer or the transition, and we've lost a lot. And so there's good things about postmodernism, which is like there's a little bit more of taking a meta perspective, and there's not just buying into whatever is being told from top down instruction. And, there's like a lot of positive things that goes along with it. But one of the negative things that goes along with it is nobody knows who they are anymore. They don't know what information they can trust. They don't know
the expectations put on them.
They don't know the expectations
That's
on them.
That's what labels do. I think they give us a sense of expectations. Well, if I labeled myself this way, I've got to be congruent with what I've labeled myself to be.
That's right. And the oversimplified labels in the past helped do the heavy lifting of dealing with the complexity that is the self that we already talked about. And if we don't have those labels anymore, what are we supposed to do? And so here comes type, right? And most of the people who are into type right now they're not middle-aged people like us. They're kids. Like a lot of people into type are like teenagers or 20-somethings. That was the age that I learned about type.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of kids who are trying to figure out who they are, who are trying to figure out their place in life. You can really tell when somebody's a midlifer into type, their relation to type is very different than if they're like a teenager or 20-something. I mean, that makes sense, right? Your relationship to everything changes when you're in midlife. But the older you get, the less, like some people, they feel like they age out of type.
Yeah.
They're like, that's the thing I used to be into, but I'm not into that anymore. As if it was a child's tool, it was a toy that they picked up and played with for a while to kind of understand how things worked as a simulation of reality, like one of those little cooking sets. And they were like, yeah, but I grew out of that and I went and did the real thing.
Yeah.
And I think when somebody doesn't need labels anymore, they think that they've aged out of the toy of type. But the further down this rabbit hole I get, the more I'm like, no, that's just first layer.
Yeah.
Right. And if you go back to the point of origin in Jung's work, what are functions measuring? What did Jung discover? Right. When he sliced and diced these mental processes, what was he trying, like, what was he observing? Right. Is it just what people are attuned to or what they're interested in? Or, you know, like what captures their attention, or just how they learn, you know, or like just the criteria they're making decisions based on. And I think, I think all of those are emergence, but I think that there's something really powerful that lives underneath all of that.
Well, they are called mental processes, so they're in motion and processing. They're process focused.
Yes.
They're not static labels.
Correct.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
Immediately that comes up.
Well, we call it, yeah, exactly. But this came out of a conversation that I had with John Beebe recently, who has been helping me on a paper that I'm writing.
So this is Dr. John Beebe.
Dr. John Beebe.
Written a lot of books. He's written several books and given lots of talks. He's a Jungian analyst. He's in his 80s now. Yeah,
he's kind of a rock star in the type world. And most people know him from his 8-function model, where he married Jungian archetypes to the cognitive function stack.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Integrity in Depth, and I would argue one of the best minds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we are, all of us are familiar with functions because of John.
And you and I personally apprentice with him monthly. We're doing this since 2020.
Yes.
For years now.
Yeah.
And personally coaching and mentoring, and we're apprenticing with him.
And he has officially become, like, I have a sort of a
pantheon.
I mean, not just a pantheon, but like a Mount Rushmore of
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I have like my Mount Rushmore of mentors.
For people out of the country, it's basically a Hall of Fame.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Keep
like
going.
These presidents' faces that have been
carved
into the side of a mountain.
Yeah.
And he is officially on my Mount Rushmore. And it's not just because he has a lot of good things to say. It's because I think about type fundamentally differently now that I've apprenticed under him. Yeah. Right. He's taught me so much. And it's because he doesn't see type. He sees type still from a modernist frame, interestingly enough, because, you know, he's well into his 80s and he comes from a modernist time period. And it's not, he's just probably never, he was not raised in a postmodern way of thinking. So he still has a very modernist way of looking at it, but he has such a rich depth of understanding. And one of the things that he and I kind of sort of developed together, I would say that it fundamentally, like, it started out as my idea. I'm going to take credit for this one. It started out as my idea, but he put like specific language to it, which he's exceptional at doing. And the thing that was birthed from the conversation that we recently have, which is going to go into this paper, is functions. The point of functions may be that they are an attempt for us to regulate consciousness. Consciousness being like an overwhelming amount of information. Yeah. And not consciousness and function should not be conflated. Consciousness is like, it's beyond our understanding. Consciousness is like it's the thing that we're all trying to figure out through both psychology and philosophy. What is consciousness? And he said this really brilliant thing. He said, you don't have to understand a thing to try to regulate it. And I'm like, that's absolutely true. Like, I don't understand how a car works, but I know I've got to put gas in it, make sure that there's oil in there, and like make sure, you know, it's like I'm trying to regulate it by giving it everything it needs. So it'll take me from point A to point B. And I don't understand how a car works, but I still, you know, like I don't even have enough knowledge to be dangerous when it comes to a car.
I've had 3 children. I don't know how they work, but I fed them and did the diaper changes, and they're still alive.
Yep, exactly. Consciousness is still not an understood thing, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to regulate it. In fact, we must regulate it because it's our interface with all, it's our dashboard of reality. Okay, our consciousness is our dashboard of reality. And I suspect that the functions are our mind's way to try to regulate our consciousness through both processing unprocessed material. So we're trying to regulate ourselves by processing what we have experienced, how it made us feel, how we think about it, what the patterns are or the conclusions and the meaning we come from it. So all of the introverted functions are an attempt to regulate what has come at us through our consciousness. And our extroverted functions, I suspect, are ways to regulate in a proactive way. Right.
Yeah.
Like to regulate our experience in by being attuned to something, because I have to also, like, consciousness means that there are other conscious creatures around and we're all sort of rubbing up against each other and banging into each other and all that stuff. And so we have to like kind of figure all that out. And so what if the functions are our brain's way of trying to regulate our experience, right? Regulate the consciousness of all of the material around us. And if I start to see type as a preference of regulation.
Yeah.
A preference of trying to understand my humanness. And because we have a cost of specialization, we can't master all of it. So we kind of go, I'm going to master some of these, and I'm going to try to regulate my experience through this, kind of understanding consciousness through these modalities.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why it's hard for me to just read a profile. Because I'm like, yep, that's one way that those type preferences can regulate their experience. That's one way. And it's a good way. It's like a good middle of the road sort of, mosaic of all the different people who are regulating their experiences with those function preferences. But but we can't limit it to that. Now, to go from I'm an ENTP, I like to invent things like Doc Brown, over to Jung was talking about how we regulate consciousness with our experience. Like there's a lot of information in between point A and point Z, right? The first one starts out understanding type as a coloring book. And then the final one is sort of understanding how it's a platform for all of our consciousness awareness, right? Like there's a lot there. So I've never felt like I've grown out of type, but it's just because type always stays ahead of me. It's like, it's always one step ahead. Every time I think I've figured everything about type out, it's like, I go, oh no, I haven't. Not even close. There's like another layer and another layer and another layer. And it just keeps going down the rabbit's hole. And so, I don't think that people should start there.
Yeah.
They shouldn't necessarily start with the concept that cognitive functions might be a way to regulate consciousness. They have to start someplace. But I do think that the further you go that direction, the thing that we're looking for when we're trying to grab labels and understand who we are through this mismatch of all of our labeling, what we're really looking for is a way to understand our experience. We're looking for a way to figure out how to engage with the complexity that is the self and the complexity that is reality and the extraordinary overwhelm of the amount of information that we're dealing with. And we're just trying to regulate it. Yeah. We're just trying to find a way to not like run screaming into the night, being like overburdened by everything that all of this means.
Yes.
And so if we have a built-in feature that helps us regulate that experience, and then we go, I'm not my type preferences, but my God, my type preferences help me with almost everything in reality because it helps me like stay chill when in the face of a lot of stuff. Like that's, I think, who am I? I'm the person who is having a human experience that's trying to regulate all this. Yeah. And that feels so much closer to the truth than I am an ENTP or I'm a whatever.
Problem is it took you 30 years to get there. Like the challenge I have, I think, by the way, first of all, I want to ratify everything you just said. Like I agree with you 100%.
Sorry, did I go off on my little tangent?
No, I agree with you. What I'm demoralized about is how long it would take somebody to get there naturally. Because like my dream, my dream is that you, the person right now, if you're listening or watching, we're going to get so good at helping you map where your dysregulation lives that you'll be able to take the map into your therapist session next week. That's my dream.
That's the goal.
You go, hey, I don't have the tools to deal with this, but I think I'm dysregulated on the cognitive channel here, and it's these issues. Yep. And you take it in and you sit down, your therapist now has the tools to help you navigate that. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're here to maybe necessarily address every single possible challenge that the world could ever face. Mm-mm. There's just too many problems of the world. But I think the work that we could contribute here, Antonia, is that we could help people map where this dysregulation lives in a much more nuanced way.
Well, and then people don't have to spend 30 years understanding type. They don't even have to spend 3 minutes.
Maybe you don't even understand type at all. That's the other thing I'm realizing is,
that's right.
Does personality type have to come into this? Or could you just understand there's 4 channels: sensing, feeling, thinking, and intuition, or existential kind of like abstractions. We're still figuring out how to talk about that. Tune in. Where do you feel the stress? Like mapping the stress of your your experience right now. Where is it? Is it in your body? Is it in your physicality and your sensing or your environment? Is it in your emotions, your feelings between you and other people or internally? Is it in your thoughts? Are you having problems doing problem solving and addressing actual issues and problems?
Overwhelmed by the problems.
Your beliefs, are they off? Or are you overwhelmed by the meaning of something and the abstractions or archetypical energies or something? So,
or your direction. Yeah.
Where's the stress live? And I think just like getting to the sense of I think my stress is in this channel. This has been so profound in my own life to map the stress. Often 90% of the time it's in my cognitive channel.
Yeah.
I go, it's my thinking channel. Immediately it's helping me solve problems in my life because I'm not trying to solve it in my thinking or in my intuition or my feeling or my sensing. I'm addressing it at the channel it's actually dysregulated in.
And in the last episode, I talked about my family system having negative 100 units of honor for introverted feeling, right? Like nobody understood emotional processing. That was not something that was even sort of taught. And even as an adult, as somebody who, I'm trying to not have my demons become the problem of everybody around me. So I'm trying to do plenty of processing my own unprocessed material.
Yes.
And introverted feeling is part of it. If I don't do sufficient introverted feeling processing, then I become everybody hears about it through my extroverted feeling where I try to blame everybody and, I'd get really angry or sad or whatever. So, I know that I need to do that, but even conceptually knowing I needed to do that until I understood that it was actually a channel of regulation. It's trying to create a homeostasis, right? It's trying to not have too many spike points or plummets. And a little bit of that is actually regulating. A little bit of those highs and lows is actually a good thing. But constant, numbed out, which is how I've always felt about introverted feeling, has just been always numbed out with these peak moments of emotional explosion or whatever. And when I say I'm numbed out, I don't just mean in emotional processing. I mean in an understanding of who I am, and numbed out to personal value, and numbed out to my preferences and what I like and dislike, right? All of those things I've just been totally numbed out to. And then of course you can only have so much numbness before it turns into an explosion. And the point of me saying all of that is once I understood that was what was happening, is that there was a regulation process happening, I started doing right action a lot more often.
Because you knew where to regulate.
Well, and I knew why it was important.
Yeah.
Right. I knew I knew that regulation was happening. It wasn't just you need to process your emotions. I was no, I need to keep this channel clear. That's actually what I need to do. I need to keep my channel clear. And so now when I get overwhelmed by an emotion, as opposed to kicking the can, which is what I've always done my whole life, and especially things like embarrassment, if I remember an embarrassing situation when I was younger or something that I feel a lot of shame around or whatever, man, I would just be nope, don't want to think about that. I would throw it over to the side and be I guess I don't have to process that experience, right? Yes. I don't have to process that emotion. I now sit with it. I have emotional process and release exercises that I do, that I walk almost every one of my coaching clients through because it's so helpful. I do emotional process and release, and then it's complete. And now it's not waiting for me later to blow up or be this big stack. And it wasn't until I understood that I was clearing a channel and I was helping regulate the entire system. And that was the point of the function to begin with, is to help me regulate consciousness. It was as soon as all of these things started clicking into place, I'm oh, I can't not do this. I have to do this.
Yeah.
This is an important part of my experience.
I think for me, it's the one thing I've been noticing too is channel bleed. I'm really trying to be careful right now when I feel dysregulated or stressed because again, I feel it mostly on the cognitive channel, especially we got so much to do. And it's the issue of my life right now. I'm dysregulated on my cognitive channel a lot. And I noticed that when I get dysregulated there, it just naturally wants to bleed over into my feelings and emotions. And because I feel more comfortable there. And I can create a lot of challenge with I can express a lot. And I trust myself that I can clean up any mess I create there. So sometimes I'm more caustic to people or more emotionally combative than I need to be for the information and I've been really trying to train myself. Don't let it bleed over. Stay in the channel that you're feeling the stress in, I'm like, I don't want to address it in the channel I feel it in. I want to address it in the channel that I'm more familiar with, but it doesn't actually address it there. And so channel bleed is something I'm really playing with right now and try to stop the channel bleed. So I'd be curious if you're listening or watching right now, if you're identifying with this idea that these 4 channels can be dysregulated, are you noticing that you have one that tends to be dysregulated more than the others? And you tend to also have channel bleed where that one wants to jump to a different channel to get you to address it because that's where you feel more comfortable. I'm just curious what you would say in the comments below this episode. Yeah.
Well, and also it's not just channel bleed because of us wanting to put it in our sandbox. It's also, it seems to be that the foundation of everything is sort of sensing or a relationship to our experiences as with the body as the instrument.
Yeah.
And so when we have stress in any of the channels, we're going to feel it in the instrument that's having an experience, which is our body. Like, as in, we might be physically dysregulated,
whether we recognize it or not.
Well, even though that's not the channel of the dysregulation. Does it make sense? It's like, it's going to kind of affect that too, because that's the instrument that tells us what's going on with almost everything. Like, that's where the central nervous system lives. And so that's where stress in the body, any sort of stress will show up as stress in the body. So when you go, like, which of these channels are you dysregulated in? It's like, sometimes it takes a while to really see that it's not physical or somatic. And we telegraph distress emotionally. So because we telegraph distress emotionally, if we're dysregulated on other channels, we might be showing up emotionally around it, even though that's not the channel that's dysregulated.
Or someone that's trained to never express distress might be like on fire inside of themselves, like burning alive inside, metaphorically speaking, like they're dying inside.
Yes.
But their family system, like we talked about in the last episode, didn't allow for any kind of expression about that. So they just hold it in and it just eats alive. They just eating away at their soul.
Yeah.
Because they can't signal distress.
Right.
Because they were not allowed to growing up.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another thing that can happen 100%. Too for people.
Yeah. So if these functions are a way for us to like sort of regulate our experience, regulate consciousness, and we have parts of ourselves that we are more just sort of pre-wired to regulate and other parts that we're pre-wired to ignore if we can get away with it, then what functions give us is a way to attune to our consciousness and to make sure that it's healthy.
Yeah.
Right. It's like a cleaning. It's like it helps us clean things out. It helps us get to a place where we're attuning to stuff that creates dysregulation inside of us, but we might have never looked at it before. We might have never considered it before. That's a thing for me because of my pre-wiring and my family of origin and blah, 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 and all the story, right? All the story of my life, which tells me that this is a gaping black hole of awareness.
Yeah.
And so it's actually, if I look at it through that lens, I think Jung was a genius, but I mean, that's brilliant. It's brilliant. And where does that application not hold true? So there are, to go back to the point of origin of this podcast, there are similarities. Everybody who has ENTP preferences is going to have a similarity, right? There's going to be similarities because there's a pattern there. We're all, if I'm going to steal the language that I just talked about, we're all focused on regulating our experience through our intuition and regulating our experience through our thinking, right? Like that's going to be common to all of us. And there's going to be common stories because the world that, as it's set up now in this moment in the timeline of all of humanity, has certain reactions and responses to those and pressures on all of us, depending upon the context of the moment and the timeline in which we exist. So we're going to have similarities. Yeah. But we're still going to be totally unique people with a wide variety of capacity of regulation.
Well, I think, this is where this thought, I just want to land it for my own sake.
Yeah.
It's the behavior that comes from what we do, if it's an attempt to be in regulation, like to deal with dysregulation and regulation, how could we ever take any single behavior and tie it to a personality type? Because if it's about the regulation process, what's the material that type and that person's dealing with is going to influence the behavior that they take to regulate in that moment, and all of it on their training and stuff. They might have grown up, and this is perfectly their channel. Maybe they're EFJ preferences, ESFJ. They grew up as an ESFJ. They're fully equipped. I mean, you mentioned this for your sister last episode.
Yeah, they grew up in my family.
She grew up in your family, so it wasn't any really space for extroverted feeling.
Right.
So it's her dominant.
No, there's space for it,
but in a very particular way.
But not in the way that she
was
would
bringing
be.
it.
Yeah.
So she gets the message growing up. This is not. You're not supposed to be using this. You're
Right.
not. Don't
Or
bring
in
this
this
out.
way.
Don't bring this out in this way. So she probably changed her behavior to match the system she was part of.
100%.
So when she has to regulate that, she may not look like other ESFJs, and you
Correct.
might go, "Oh, that can't be an ESFJ because
right.
she's not behaving how I know ESFJs to behave."
Totally. So if you're looking at these as regulating behaviors, it changes things. It alters it. It's like,
How desperate are you? How much training do you have here? How
You
much
got it.
urgency is there? What's
That's
the
right.
timeline you're on? I think it actually gives much more fidelity, and it helps us really understand, wait, it's not a behavior A equals cognitive function A. It's a lot more variant than that. But it's not just completely open-ended either.
right,
I think
exactly.
if we start to get away from definitions and pinning things down, I worry that people just be like, well, anything, you can make an argument for anything.
Right. No, and it's not. It's like the definitions of the functions, good definitions of the functions are describing a regulation strategy. That's what they're doing. That's a good definition, a foundational definition. It's like, I'm trying to regulate this part of my life.
Yeah.
And so the functions are regulation strategies. Now, how we work with them is bespoke to us as an individual.
That's right.
And there's a lot of different ways of going about that depending upon the moment in the timeline of humanness or humanity that we're existing has its own rules and like there's a zeitgeist that we engage and interact with that like gives us certain pressures and expectations and it changes and alters throughout time. And so, but the reason why we're going to kind of look similar is because we're dealing with the same external pressures in society around us, but we're going to have different pressures in our family. Although there's going to be some similarities there too, if there's an idea of what family means in our society. Does that make sense? It's like there's a bunch of things set up that are very similar that is going to encourage us to show up similar. But if a person has a very different story than the middle of the road, they might be a person of that type that you can't, it's hard to identify because they didn't have the same pressures on them. They didn't have the same, they weren't reacting and responding to the same things. I mean, it's if you're a type influencer or if you are a person in this world, like questioning somebody's type is like par for the course. Okay. So that's like their entire website set up to like basically tell you that if you're a type influencer, you don't know your personality type. So, I mean, there really are like, I can't remember what the big catalog of types are, but basically every single person who's a type influencer is basically told that they're not the type that they think they are. And I think it's just because that's the level of, I mean, it's probably filled with teenagers and that's the level of game they're playing.
It sounds like a rapper technique. Like rappers will like make fun of a really popular rapper so they get the attention on them and then they get a little boost in their credibility
it's like it's a bit of a cheat or a hack, right? It's like a cheat code or something.
Like posturing.
Yeah. You're not the type you think you are. And it's like, okay, kid. And you learned about type 1. But being like people accusing me of not being an ENTP is very common, right? Yeah. And it goes anywhere from, I mean, it used to be like ESFP all the time, which is really baffling to me. I mean, of all the type, I'm raising a little ESFP and there's like some of my best friends are ESFPs. No, some of my really close friends right now are ESFPs, and I like admire and love them. And I'm like, but how people are mistaking what's going on here for what's going on there is baffling. That's very interesting to me. When somebody said I had ESFJ preferences, I'm like, well, at least you're in the right quadra. So I'm like, okay, that's a little closer. I can hang with why you thought ESFJ. But the one that always gets me is ENTJ. I'm just like, ENTJ, where does that come from?
Because you speak with confidence. You speak with confidence and certainty.
So do all thinking types.
I don't know. A lot of ENTPs will just kind of spin up and just go all over the place, and they interrupt themselves and then interrupt their own interruption, and they're like stumbling over their fast patterning.
There can be, there's a bit of that energy.
You've been trained to be very direct and deliberate and confident in your speech, and you also lay out thought in a linear fashion for people. So I think that's why people perceive this way.
Okay, I get. I mean, maybe. I also feel like extroverted thinking types have an economy of language that I do not.
Sure.
You know, like I always say, if 10 words would be sufficient, I'm going to say 1,000. So I have no economy of language. I have no, like, I'm just going to keep talking. And I do that anything where I like repeat myself 3 or 4 times just to make sure I got it right. But regardless, this is, you know, like I use this as an example. Not to defend my type, because I don't give two shits what people think my type is, honestly. But I also didn't get to engage with the zeitgeist the way that most ENTPs do, because I was raised in a cult.
Yeah.
So I was taken out of society. Does that make sense? It's like, and I was able to engage and interact with society just enough to be familiar with what their rules were, but not enough to have the same pressures applied to me. And I had very different pressures applied to me. And when I see somebody who, has a really interesting quote unquote backstory, I know there's a high likelihood that they will not be the profile version of that type.
Of course.
Right? Because the less you are in the center of the zeitgeist bell curve, the more likely your type preferences are going to show up very differently. And I think that this idea that the functions are there to help us regulate our experience, regulate our consciousness. It's like, okay, so what happens when an ENTP is raised in a cult? How do they regulate their consciousness? Well, they initially do it by not doing any thinking at all if you can get away with it, which was me for the first 30 years of my life. And then if they all of a sudden go, oh, I can't stop thinking, and I'm gonna hit a glass ceiling here. In fact, I already have, and I feel myself like bumping up against it over and over and over again. And my extroverted intuition is like, hey, are we gonna have any new experiences? Like, is that a thing? Do we get to go do new things? Because I'm getting pretty bored in this like hamster wheel that I'm in. What happens then? Well, then once thinking is available to you, I don't know how other ENTPs would do it, but I went, that's how I'm going to regulate myself. Yeah. That's my regulation. And so I jumped into introverted thinking. Like, I didn't even put goggles and a snorkel on. I was like as far down in the depths as I possibly could, because my previous life was massively dysregulating. And I'm like, this is the one thing I wasn't allowed to do, truly. So I'm going to go all in. I'm all in on introverted thinking.
Yeah.
So that's what happened, right? And so because of that, and because I was raised to have to explain and express everything, and I was raised with a microphone in front of me, and I was raised with all these other things, then it kind of makes sense that was my quote unquote regulation story.
Yeah.
Does that track? It's like these are ways of trying to regulate ourselves. There are ways of trying to understand our experience, understand our consciousness, understand what's going on for us.
I understand it.
And so if you can see them as strategies to try to figure how to not be overwhelmed by life, I think you get much closer to the purpose of type.
People ask us all the time, can you change your personality type? And looking through this lens, I guess we could rephrase that to say, like if somebody said, can I change my type, or does my type change over time? That question could be rephrased as, can I change the preferred way that I regulate my consciousness over time?
Right.
But that would be another way they could be asking that.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of that is such a complex question to ask. The idea of regulating consciousness over time, and can I change? Like, oh my God. And then you go over the other side. In a way, this is extremely accessible if you didn't talk about type at all. Mm-hmm. Like cutting out personality type might actually make regulation more accessible to people because you don't actually have to know all this. You just have to know there's 4 channels you get stressed on. Which channel you stressed on? Focus on that. Fix that. Here's some tools and resources. Because it almost hollows out the middle class of all of this. We've got like the super easy accessible, and then like the super hard theoretical, and there's like no middle ground now.
Yeah.
And I think to go all the way back to what Myers-Briggs gave us is, I think, maybe this will tidily tie it up, is a little bit of that bridge.
Yeah.
The bridge in the middle ground. Even though it's a 20th century model, even though it's a little dichotomous for my taste, even though it's measuring something that I think we probably have tools to measure things differently now, and so we're thinking about it baked into a 20th century truth versus truth, monolith, 3 TV station mentality.
Right.
Right? And we're looking for the answer, not the question. It still has viability because it fills the middle gap between what's really going on, or regulating consciousness. How are you going to talk about that with anybody? All the way over to it's super accessible, but there's no type understanding at all. I think it bridges those two worlds beautifully.
Well, and I agree that I think that talking about regulation in this way makes it so that people can benefit from the model without knowing what it is, without understanding the model at all. But when you add the element of understanding the model, there's now a lot of light that is shone on these strategies. And so I would say I would never get rid of the model, and I would always make it available to people because I think it's a map of consciousness too. It's a map of regulation. It's not just channels of regulation. It's a map of it. And there are some really, really, really helpful ways of engaging and interacting. And if you know your best fit type, there's a power in there. There's like a real depth of understanding and depth of awareness of how to use it to become a more like sort of mentally healthy person. And so I think that's important. But I do appreciate that the closer I feel like I'm getting to what Jung was trying to say, the less I feel like type systems are training wheels. Does that make sense?
They're too tidy for what reality bears out.
Yes.
And so they're great to learn, just like when you're learning something as a child.
Yeah.
The nuance and experience complication isn't there for a kid. They keep it real simple for a kid to understand the building blocks of something. The nuance and all that comes later as you get some experience, but you're learning something. I mean, remember when you learned to drive? 10 and 2, like the radio couldn't be on. I was like worried about going over the line. I'm helping my kids learn how to drive now. And it's like, they're always worried they're going to cross the line and they're really nervous. They're just learning the basics, the coloring book version of driving, if you will.
Well, and I want to harken back to something you said earlier, which is, it's like, I feel like I'm getting to the depths of it. And you're like, yeah, but it took you 30 years to get there. And it's like, well, what's the point of what we do if it's not to make it much faster for the next person?
Of course.
And so I think what you were just basically saying is that if we take this out of the realm of people having to understand a full system, they'll be able to benefit from it much easier without having to learn all that stuff. But I still think that I feel like we can get people from 0 to 60 really fast.
Well,
and that's kind of the point of the programs we teach.
What a great segue to my pitch.
Yeah, go for your pitch. I think that's a good idea.
I'm not going to pitch, but I will say that I think to our point, you want to take 30 years doing this, or you want to go a lot faster, come over to personalityhacker.com. We've got a lot of tools, resources. We're going to go deeper into this regulation in general on all 4 channels: sensing, feeling, cognitive, intuition. We're going to talk a lot about this. We think this is the killer app of personality type. We've seen it in our clients. I see it in my own personal life now. I mean, I can't tell you how much this has changed the game for me in our relationship, Antonia. Yeah. At the time of this recording, we're going through some pretty intense challenges in our life. Some of the big ones, and I'm sure you listening, you might be going through some big challenges too. So a lot of materials coming up for me. I'm able to tune into things. I'm getting dysregulated on a frequent enough basis that I can tune in, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity, actually. I'm grateful that life isn't easy right now. I'm grateful that I've got some difficult challenges, some inescapable challenges, because it's allowing me a laboratory for some of this content to be worked out in my personal life, to map it here. So if you're interested in pursuing this further, the first place to start is head over to our Substack. You need to subscribe to our Substack, because we're going to be developing a lot of these ideas on there. That's the best place to be connected. We've got conversations going there, articles coming out, content's coming out there, a community is forming there. We're going to continue to grow that. I think that's a key place to go. And then also, I recommend getting an owner's manual for your best fit personality type.
We say that at the end of every episode. Can I make a recommendation for a different program right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Owner's manuals are great. Go get yourself one if you don't have one.
For all the 16 types. Yeah, go ahead.
Profiler training.
Yes.
We've reimagined it. It's a little bit of a different program than it was before.
Well, we've expanded it. It used to be just about conversational profiling, and we still have that. It's the core, but we've also expanded to situational profiling.
Well, and to include some of the stuff we talked about today.
Dysregulation.
Yeah, exactly.
Descending orders of certainty. We talk about shadow material in this program, this one, where we talk about shadow. We talk about archetypes. We talk about Dr. John Beebe's content in there too. It's much more online. We meet monthly now, not just a big live event at the end of the year, but we also have monthly touch points so we can learn faster and build skill faster.
And the purpose of it is to be experiential learning, to make it so that you can not just get, your itch scratched. Around type, but to make it so that it's alive in your life. It's it's a thing that you're using to become a more healthy person, and to help assist other people to become healthier. And so I really recommend checking out the new profiler training.
Profilertraining.com is where you go for that. Also hacker.com, but profilertraining.com. You can get more information. You can even download our little method guide. We've got a little step method there. You can start practicing profiling just off that guide alone. It's a little PDF you can download. At the time of this recording, maybe we'll turn it into an app or something someday. But right now, you could practice a little bit of the questions to ask and how to tune into a profiling session of what you're spotting in people. So yeah, head over to profilertraining.com. And then leave a comment or answer some questions here or ask a question here. Like, tell us what's coming up for you as we talk about regulation, dysregulation, personality types. What has been emerging for you in this conversation? Leave your comment below on whatever platform you're listening or watching
Whatever
us on.
platform.
My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker Podcast.